Welcome back once again to Silent Hill 3 In Depth, the playthrough where we will go through the entire game and commentate over it. Usually these are done live stream, but due to unfortunate circumstances with my computer situation, that's not going to happen for the foreseeable future. So, in honor of trying to finish this, we're just going to do the rest on my own. So, let's go. This should be the 6th part of the series, I believe. There are a bunch of different types of medicine, but none of it looks useful. I guess I should just leave it all alone. Responsible Heather. Okay, so we should pretty much just be concerned with getting to the end of the game. And considering, the last episodes were sidetracked with a lot of chat and responding and talking with people, this should be a little more focused, so shouldn't be as long to get to the end game as it was to get to the middle of the game. I got a hospital map. Let's continue. So we'll talk more about this aspect of the game later, but it's pretty plain as day obvious that Silent Hill 3 and 4, which I believe were developed simultaneously, kind of suffered for it with some budget cuts. And the reuse of Brookhaven and Southern Silent Hill is a big aspect, and we'll get to that later. Now, this is the nurse enemy. Once again, we have a nurse returning for a Silent Hill game. She's aggressive as fuck today. Please just walk around, but this is the 3rd variant we've seen of this specific enemy type, where in Silent Hill 1 we have puppet nurses, which were these hunched-over monsters with parasitic growths coming out of their back. And in Silent Hill 2 you have, the infamous sexy nurses, which are, just dolled up outside of their pustule, head. This, we have a bit of a mix of the two designs, where they're hunched over in the same manner as the puppet nurses from the first game, but their base design is ripped straight from Silent Hill 2, down to the outfit they're wearing and everything. Now, that's not an issue, but it also goes towards my overall stance that I think this chunk of the game really suffers from the rush and the budget constraints that were definitely affecting it at the time, at least in my opinion. But let's talk about what they mean in general. So, according to the Book of Lost Memories, they are, and I quote, a nurse that roams the halls of the hospital. It may be that the nurse of the hospitals it may be that the nurses of the hospital have transformed into monsters, but the details are unclear. So, what's interesting about that description to me is that this is the 2nd instance of the game's making mention of a human being, a person, possibly transforming into a monster. The missionary was the first one, the boss that we fought in the last episode. Oh. Now, essentially, I think design-wise, 2 is a big influence, down to the fact that this is a sequel to Silent Hill 1, and with the way they move, with the hunched-over, jerky expressions, I think these are definitely more of a callback to the puppet nurses than anything else. I am taking needless damage. Oh no. You know what? Eat it. Okay, well, let's reload here. That was unnecessary damage. That's gonna come back to haunt me, I guarantee it. But, we continue. So, back to the puppet nurse example, I think it's a little more interesting that these things resemble them, because in the first game, back when I did Silent Hill 1 in depth, way back in the day, I sort of theorized that the reason that the puppet nurses were the way they were is that Alessa sort of saw them as puppets for the hospital that Michael Kaufman ran that sort of covered up what her mother did to her. So, essentially, I think it's the same sort of use of symbolism of they are a puppet on strings without control over their own actions. But the big difference is that I think this is more to do with the idea of predestination and fate, which are more ideas that Silent Hill 3 has to sort of address. This is a fun one. There must have been some kids here too then. I played with dolls like this when I was a child too. It really takes me back. What's this? This day has finally come. That's right, the day when you and I will meet. I was always thinking of you here in this gloomy cell. I've never even known your name or face until today. But now I know you're the one I've been waiting for. And haven't you been waiting for me too? That's why you came to rescue me. Oh, how I love you, Heather. I want to give you my prized doll. I made early in the morning for me. I want to give you my prized doll I made to commemorate our meeting, the start of this everlasting love. Ah, I can already see your smiling face. Stanley Coleman. Disgusting. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Shit like this just goes to show how much better the little character interactions with objects in the environment are in this game compared to 1 and 2. But this is our introduction to Stanley Coleman, who is going to be a recurring character, I guess you could call him, for the hospital section. We'll talk more about it as we go, because the more interesting stuff is going to come here shortly, but I think what I find interesting about Stanley right away is that he's another sort of feminine tinged horror figure. Whereas you have Vincent, who is sort of this abuse of power kind of situation and information, and you have unclear motivations with someone like Douglas and the way he's introduced. This is the direct stalker fear. See, with Douglas, it was a little ambiguous what he wanted. He knew Heather, old man wearing trench coat, following young girl into bathroom in the mall, early morning, fuck. But we know, going forward, Douglas had, pretty much no ulterior motives in that regard. So, but it was the ambiguity of the situation. But Stanley? Nah. Now, Stanley, we know exactly what he wants, and it's not good. We'll talk more specifically about Stanley's deal, but he's definitely one of the more memorably unsettling aspects of the game. I think it was this side had what we needed. Yes. Oh, this is actually one of my favorite dumb details of the game. There's a memo posted on the refrigerator. Food only. Do not store drugs. I wonder if it's okay to store health drinks in here. Does that imply that the health drink is like a brand in this universe? Like Red Bull, essentially? Speaking of that, Red Bull time. Ah, delicious. It's a medical record or something. It's for this Leonard guy. Could this be the same Leonard that Vincent was talking about? Room S12. Presenting mild audiovisual hallucinations, emotional instability, obsessive ideas. Suspect mild schizophrenia. Will continue observation. Basically a calm and cooperative with a strong sense of justice. However, according to reports, becomes very violent when overexcited. The other one is for Stanley Coleman. This is the guy who wrote that sick diary. Room SO7. Usually passive and cowardly, also egotistical. Sometimes shows and acts on obsessive attachment to a particular woman. This has caused violent incidents. Use caution. So we're learning more about Stanley already, and he is not an okay guy. Oh yeah, little fun detail. This is where James finds a memo for a door password in the second game, but yeah, we're finding more about Stanley, and the less we need to interact with him clearly is for the best. Let's see. Alright, so I think the first floor is open. Eat shit. So usually I try to not kill monsters as often, but the nurses actually are a bit of a problem in this game. They're a lot more aggressive than they were in Silent Hill 2, and in general I find this game more difficult, so what we should do actually, reduce our damage, so we'll go slower with the vest, but because at this point the nurses are really severe physical threats, we should probably take that offset. Nope. What the fuck was that? Damn, alright. Man, this game still fucking gets me sometimes. Damn. Alright, so, moving on. Hey, we recognize this. There are a lot of things stuck to the wall. A cookie, a toothbrush, a spoon, a Christmas card, a clock. Whoever it was probably used glue. But why do this in the first place? There's a key glued to the wall. I'd love to take it with me, but it's stuck really tight. I can't even pull it off. Disgusting. I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Let's read the next Stanley note. The organization has shut me up in here. They mean to break my will, to make me forget about all of that. But I'll stay sane even if they throw me in here with the lunatics. But how about if I stick this to the wall? That would be worthless. You can peel it off, can't you? With that junk those nasty wenches won't stop using. If a thing has no meaning, there's no reason for it to exist at all, just as you exist for me. But why haven't you taken my doll with you? How my gift must have embarrassed you. How cute you are, Heather. Stanley Coleman. So, between the notes, the obsessive behavior memo from the hospital staff, all the trinkets he glues to the wall here as his, and this description of, like, you exist for me, Heather, it's fair to say that Stanley Coleman, how do I put this? I think what's kind of interesting is that, and also the fact that it's paired with a little doll that he always puts in front of you. Stanley I kind of see as a figure that he's sort of like the male gaze personified. So, minor spoilers going forward, but you never will physically really see or interact with Stanley in this game. He's just this faceless, formless presence that's kind of watching over you constantly. So he's playing into that stalker fear, obviously, but despite all of his claims for love and affection, paired with the note from the hospital staff saying that he's done this to multiple women and will continue to do this to multiple women, while also using language like "you exist for me," Heather, and all of his use of like objects that he kind of fixates on and glues to his wall. Nail polish remover, perfume. It's fair to say that Stanley is quite literally objectifying every woman, and Heather included. It's this obsessive need to just have a woman, like own her physically. And unfortunately, this is one of the downsides of not playing this game on hard puzzle difficulty, is that we don't get essentially this. So this is a puzzle that's supposed to be for the door to the left here. On hard mode, it's a lot more in depth, and it is a poem believed to be from Stanley describing his idea of making love to a woman. And it's fucking grotesque. Genuinely some of the most gross shit ever written in this series. If I remember in the editing, I'll put it up on screen now. But I think the point in general is that Stanley is that I love you, don't leave me, loving you for an object, where the moment you become inconvenient or you break the illusion of being a love doll for him, you're violently disposed of. That's Stanley Coleman. And the idea of him obsessively stalking you for that idea, Not great. But here's another Stanley note. Before we read that, though, one minor thing he said in the second one there. The organization has me locked up in here. Does that mean the call? We'll talk more about that later. There's another note that sort of alludes to some call connections for Stanley, but you may not yet have realized your own true feelings, but you sense them unconsciously. And so you're trying to get closer to me. That's a virtue, the path to paradise. If the door's locked, open it. Use the password for the prison gates. I've forgotten his name. Anyway, that quack has it posted. He should be here too. I mean, 4 numbers would have been good enough, but he kept going. Isn't it a shame? I'm not there. Aren't you irritated? I long for you, but you're so cruel. Still, I want you, Heather. Stanley Coleman. Fucking gross. Anyway, so we have the nail polish remover, but let's do the puzzle here and clear out this floor. The first is larger than the second twice the third. The third smaller than the fourth is half the first. This is actually one of the more clever number puzzles. It kind of reminds me of the piano puzzle from the first game, where it's actually pretty clever with its wordplay and translation. So the first is larger than the second twice the third. So we know the second has to be an even number because it can be like multiplied and divided evenly. The third is smaller than the fourth, so we know that the second and the third have to be even numbers, and the fourth is half the first. So we know that they have to be even because of the division. So, give you a moment. The first is larger than the second twice the third smaller than the fourth is half the first. Well, the third actually doesn't have to be even, but pretty clever. 4 numbers are not repeated, 3 are not on the top row, 2 are not on the right row. One of the numbers is the final key. One of the numbers being the final key is a really interesting one when we get to it, because what it is 8, 6, 3, 4. Now, if you remember, there's a lot of reuses of 4s in this game, specifically in references to cycles. At the very beginning of the game, we had the 3 carousels on top of a larger spinning 4th circle. We had the 4 rotating fans during the moth killing puzzle, where you had to stop and start the cycle. And of course, we have the 3 cycles of Alessa, Cheryl, and Heather, with, logically speaking, a 4th incarnation on the way, with the 4th being sort of the key. Just another little reference to that. Kind of interesting. Eat shit. Oh yeah. If you notice there, the nurses pack heat in this game. Which is another reason we want to get rid of them. Lock's broken. Lock's broken. Everything's rusty, shit's locked. The game. Uh-oh. We turn off the alarm. So it is 0101. About that. Alarm's already off. I want to look at this. The pillow's stained and sticky with blood. That's not good. The attaché case is locked. Alright, attaché case HD, go! Got an instant camera. Always the creepiest kind. Alright, what are my shotgun shells looking like right now? Pretty good. The shotgun we really only need for enemies more than bosses, except for the boss of the hospital. But outside of that, we really don't need the shotgun. Nope. Lock's broken. I can't open it. So this is interesting. All this debris covering a wall, blocking it off. And if we check the map, nothing there. Nothing indicating a door. Let's keep that in mind. That's not foreshadowing or anything. I'm going to delete that, actually. I will save your ears. In the final video, you won't even know what I saved your ears from. That's the magic of editing. Oh, shit. Locked. Alright, well. Oh. Fuck. And away I go. Now... Yeah, shit, I'm actually still healthy. Okay. Man, when I was doing test runs for this game, just for the speed factor, I didn't actually use the vest. That was a mistake. I really should have been hammering in on that. Because, like, the damage it negates is extremely noticeable. Because, like, if that's a full knockdown hit, that should have done, like, a shitload of damage. That is a mistake on my end. But, yeah, just for the sake of speed, you are slowed down significantly. Which is why we're only going to be using this for this closed-off area. So what's interesting about the perfume is that this actually attracts and spawns new enemies if you use it. Interesting. Let's see, where is it? Nail polish remover. Got a stairwell key. Hell yeah. Let's go! Do. But yeah. We'll talk about it more in a little bit, but it is just very disappointing that we are doing Brookhaven again, despite the fact that this area, well, Brookhaven and Southern Silent Hill in general, just have nothing at all to do with Alessa as a character, or the Silent Hill 1 story. Very disappointing. What's not disappointing is this. It's a wheelchair. Where's the person that was using it? I guess we're gonna find out. The blood trail continues into the elevator. Part of me wants to peek in, but then it's a little creepy too. The wall is scarred with bullet marks. What the hell could they have been shooting at? Now this is the dumbest weapon in a Silent Hill game. You got a submachine gun. At least the dumbest in the good Silent Hill games. I do like that it's unloaded. That's kind of clever. Bam. Sort of like the trick they did with the pistol at the beginning of the game. But that is mostly a useless weapon that we are only going to use pretty much at the final boss, I think, actually. I think we're only going to use it there. It's pretty much useless otherwise. Oh, this is creepy. Oh, this fucking flickering light effect is so good. Streaks of blood, as if something got dragged, are continuing on the back of the shelf. No, it's more like they start from the back of the shelf. Gotta look back there. Oh, this is where Silent Hill 3 excels so much. It's just scary little shit like this. Fucking love this game so much. $4296. Let's see if I can remember that. Alright. And away we go. Do. Alright. Now what we really want to do... God, the fucking sound design still gets me. But what we want to do is go to the very top here. Find another Stanley note. I also like the rooftop. It makes me want to fly. You too? Stanley Coleman. Uh-oh. So, if I remember correctly, this is the only submachine gun ammo drop we get in the entire game. There we go. Now, I could be incorrect about that, so I'm not exactly what you'd call a professional Silent Hill 3 player, if one does exist. However, I do think this is the only drop we get for that weapon, which kind of adds to the fact that it's fucking useless for the most part. It's really kind of a silly replacement for the rifle, which is the default endgame weapon for the series, but I digress. Stamina battery, health drink, health drink. There's good variety, but nothing I would need. Now, for whatever reason, maybe I'm just misremembering. I always could have sworn there was another Stanley memo here. Now, well, let's save the game. Because I know there's one coming up that's very important, and we're gonna wanna look at that. There's a memo on the wall. Punishment for brutality towards patient. 12 hours confinement in the special treatment room. Dismissal policy no longer in effect. Contact the chief if you have any questions. There's something handwritten on top of the typewritten sentence. The trick is to not leave any marks. And one other thing. This looks like it was written by a different person. The chief is a pervert. Christy would have been better off if she had been fired. So, what is interesting here with this is a little memo, and obviously, like, my dumbass is extrapolating way too much from it. But we're sort of seeing a little glimpse into what the waking world version of Alchemilla is like, where it's just abuse trickling all the way down. Where it's implied that presumably the male chief of staff, or chief of medicine, which have you, for the hospital, is abusing the female nurses, Christy, like being the one name drop, and stereotypically nursing being like a women-driven role. So we have the very top doing something perverted to staff members, the female staff, who in turn take that abuse onto the patients and now are trying to avoid any repercussions for their own actions. Presumably making the patients, someone like Stanley, more likely to act out on the female staff, which perpetuates its own cycle itself. Also, another detail that we'll address in just a second. Lock's broken. Unlocked, so it's locked from the outside. And we got a nurse in here. Eat it. But, with the punishment being 12 hours in the isolation cell, paired with the book Lost Memory quote about the nurses being possibly transformed from people into monsters, just leaves you something to think about there. There we go. 1 minute, let me turn my page over here. Speaking of something to think about. Flowing freely, your ebony hair, like the night sky, scattering fragrance. My heart clamoring in my chest, like a storm, you trifle with it. Your pristine glance, like a feast when you smile. My thoughts disturbed, my breath like opium, it drives me mad. Eric, a great poet who conveys my feelings so well. I shouldn't have let this place get to me. Should have never gone crazy, but it's superbly enjoyable to drown in my love for you. But why won't you accept proof of my love? Don't stand on ceremony now. After all, you and I exist as one. What I give to you is the same as what I give to me. Stanley Coleman. So the detail that gets me here is the description of your ebony hair. Now, this is like kind of a little alarm bells for anyone who remembers Silent Hill 1. Have you seen a little girl? Short black hair. Is that Alessa and Cheryl naturally have black hair. So the description of your ebony hair when talking in reference to Heather, who, if we can tell by the roots here, has dyed her hair, it's kind of telling, actually, that maybe Stanley has more knowledge of the history of Alessa, Cheryl, Heather, and the cult than he's letting on. The story doesn't go anywhere with it, but it is an interesting detail to leave out, especially with how his dolls that he leaves here kind of vaguely resemble the aged-up Cheryl from Silent Hill 1, when the Spectre essentially you see running around the town. This is a stretch, and I'm very much pulling this from my ass. But there's a vague resemblance there, and the fact that Stanley's referencing the organization and Heather's ebony hair, I don't know, something to think about. Let's continue. Actually, speaking of that, obsessive reload, go! I know it's a trope of these survival horror games at the time, but the fact that you can't reload manually is such a pain in the ass. Resident Evil 4 really changed the game in that regard. $4296. Now, for the record, these are randomized, so forgive me for not remembering them. Bam, there we go. So now we're getting to the personal rooms. It's a magazine. Just some kind of gossip magazine. Teaching Despair. Hope House. Hope House, an orphanage on the outskirts of Silent Hill. Hope House, an orphanage on the outskirts of Silent Hill. But behind its false image is a place where children are kidnapped and brainwashed. Hope House is managed by the Silent Hill Smile Support Society, a charity organization sometimes called 4S. It's true that 4S is a well-respected charity that takes in poor children without homes and raises them with hope. But at its heart, it is a heathen organization that teaches its own warped dogma in lieu of good religious values. Mr. Smith, temp, who lives near Hope House, had this to say: "Sometimes at night I can hear their weird prayers and the sounds of children crying. I went there to complain one time, but they ran me right out. Since then, it hasn't changed a bit." In fact, this reporter was refused admission when he attempted to take photographs in the facility. What exactly did the folks at Hope House have to hide? During my investigations, I was able to discover, however, a suspicious-looking round concrete tower which appears to be part of their facilities. Unfortunately, no one was willing to tell us what the tower was used for, but it seems unlikely that it has anything to do with the business of raising orphans. It may in fact be a prison, or a secret place of worship. The cult religion that operates Hope House is known by the locals simply as the Order. That's a fucking translation that has caused so many headaches over the years. It's a religion that is deeply interwoven with Silent Hill's history, but its worshippers' fervent belief that they are among the elite chosen people has a dark and dangerous side. I intend to continue my investigation of Hope House and the cult behind it. I've always believed that telling the whole truth and showing the children the true path is our most important duty. Joseph Schreiber. Hope House. I feel like I've heard that name before. Okay, so let's talk about Silent Hill 4. Anyone who's a longtime fan of the series will remember that this note, Hope House, directly leads into Silent Hill 4 and the story of Walter Sullivan, in that game called Wish House, and translated for that. My apologies, had to edit out a bit of a cough there. But in Silent Hill 4, it's translated as Wish House, and you see a reprint of this magazine article in that game called Wish House. So I don't know why the change is there, but it happened. So there is a little detail before we get into Hope House specifically, is Heather saying, Hope House, I remember that. We're starting, now that Heather knows her birth history and history of reincarnation as Alessa and Cheryl the First, it is kind of interesting that her memories are just sort of bleeding directly between the three incarnations. And as the game continues, we're just going to keep seeing that happen, where they become less and less of a distinct set of three individuals as the identities start to merge more. It's a subtle thing, but you keep seeing it happen. Now, Hope, more or less, like, if you want to talk about Hope House or Witch House or whatever, Silent Hill 4 is where you get the real discussion of what it all is. However, what I do find interesting is the cult being public knowledge now. In Silent Hill 1, the police that were actively investigating the drug ring surrounding the cult with White Claudia and PTV, they had no idea that a cult existed and was presumably actively killing members of the investigative force. On the flip side of that, essentially this is a rag mag. Like, this is some random journalist talking about good religious values that must be taught. Like, this is essentially a Rupert Murdoch rag. And yet, he's able to openly write about the existence of said cult and his intent to investigate it to a mass market audience. I think what's interesting to me is that this is showing that in the 17 years since the first game, the cracks in the cult are already forming. And, like, it's no longer a secret. People are starting to figure out about it. Interesting. Jerky, we don't need that. Honestly, it's like, I respect the decision to try and include mechanics, but it's kind of useless. Uh-oh, this room looks trashed. Uh-oh, that doesn't look good. Goodbye, Heather. I'm sorry I wasn't able to respond to your love. It's all over. Leonard despises me, because I made fun of it, saying it would come to this. If it weren't for his meddling, I would have been able to meet you in just a little while. Then I could have taken you to my world. A world for us alone, more beautiful than this one. And I had been waiting for this day, for today, the day I'd see you, the day you'd save me, today. Heather, watch over him. Leonard is no ordinary guy. Farewell, I loved you. Heather, my goddess. Heather, my lover. Heather, my blah. So, a few preemptive things we're getting about Leonard. So, the doctor's memo implies that he's fine and he's polite, but he gets, like, very enthusiastic about, like, religious dogma and sort of like a sense of quote-unquote justice as he sees it. And implied schizophrenia. However, with Stanley, it's implied that he kind of just fucking killed him. And we'll see more going forward with Leonard, but I don't know if it's much schizophrenia with Leonard, or if he's just a little more clever and manipulative than people give him credit for. Where he does, like, the kindly but delusional old man routine with anyone with power over him. With anyone he can have power over, you get what happened to Stanley here. Now, Stanley himself is a piece of shit, and he is himself a threat. But it is interesting that we get those two details about Leonard before ever even interacting with the guy. Uh-oh. Aha! Get juked. And now we're in Leonard's room.
Hello?
Claudia.
No, I'm not...
Don't lie to me, Claudia. You're always trying to run from your responsibilities. Have you come to apologize? Or maybe you still don't realize how foolish you've been. The salvation of all mankind. Ah, what a ridiculous dream.
Wait, just listen to me for a second.
I've heard enough from you already. How did you turn out this way? Where did I go wrong?
Listen to me already. I'm not Claudia.
You're not Claudia.
My name is Heather.
Heather.
Who are you?
Leonard Wolf. I'm sorry. I thought you were my daughter.
Claudia is your daughter?
Oh, so you know her, do you? Are you one of her followers?
No, never. When I find her,
I can feel the hatred.
What?
Behind your words. The anger. You plan to kill her, don't you?
I'm sorry, but She killed my father.
She's a fool. But she's still my daughter. I was going to forgive her if she changed her ways. But I see it's too late. Heather, will you help me?
Help you?
I'm locked up in here, and I must stop Claudia.
Where are you now?
I'm not sure myself, but the door is at the end of the hall on the second floor. I think I can be of help to you. I have a seal. Please.
A seal? The end of the hall on the second floor.
And that's our introduction to Leonard properly. So, end of the hall on the second floor, but I thought that was closed off and nothing was there. That's weird. Probably nothing. He's probably just mistaken, right? So I just want to point out how strangely okay Leonard is with killing his daughter. As we just learned, Leonard Wolf means, as the father of Claudia, means that she is Claudia Wolf. And it's just strange how blasé he is about killing his own child. But also, it is implying that the religious fervor that he believes in is the cult, if he is, in fact, Claudia's father. Interesting little details for young Leonard. But I just want to hammer, again, I just gotta hammer it. He's okay with his own daughter getting killed by a stranger he just met and assisting. Such a weird introduction to this guy. Such a good fucking detail. It's got no number on the M door. They all have numbers on them. All in the hallway here. Not this one. But, unfortunately, Leonard seems to have something we need, so we gotta rely on it. But once again, sort of like what happened with Douglas and Vincent, we're seeing Heather being forced to interact with and trust a strange older man with unclear intentions and motivations. But also talking about callbacks, as we have many times in this playthrough Design 01, this is essentially the game's nowhere section. Even if it is functionally closer to to the Labyrinth in Silent Hill 2. In terms of, like, the endless design, the impossible space. Like, I don't have a map of this area. Oop. I think it's this way. But yeah, this is the closest Silent Hill 3 gets to having its own equivalent of the Nowhere section. Pretty interesting. Well, let's continue. Oops. Now what do we have here? Fans of the series will recognize this as the Mark of Samael from Silent Hill 1. This picture. This one doesn't make my head hurt when I look at it. Unlike the Halo of the Sun that we've been seeing as a save point. But I know this one. It must be.
Still has an unusually high fever. Eyes don't open. Getting a pulse, but just barely breathing. Why? What is keeping that child alive?
What the hell? Was I daydreaming? No, it was more like watching a video in a dark room. But that nurse, I know her. Lisa, who was so heavenly towards me in that hospital, in that hellish hospital room. She did get a little weird, though. So what we're seeing here is Heather, pretty much the most direct example of Heather fully embracing Alessa's memories as her own. She's not saying Alessa, she is saying mine. Definitely a second act swerve where she's sort of embracing the identity of a long dead girl as her own. Even if it's a past incarnation, there isn't a separation. It's like, oh yeah, I'm Alessa, and these are my memories now. We'll see this come to a head at the end of the second act, but it does lead to something interesting, at least in my opinion. Now, this is a fucking iconic section. But before we continue, just talk about the seal of Metatron back there. That, if you remember, was what the aged up Cheryl was spreading around Silent Hill in an attempt to lessen the power of the Otherworld and stop whatever Dahlia was up to. So that seal, the seal of Metatron, good in Silent Hill 1, and was against Dahlia's plans, that to the point where Dahlia tried to continually stop her and trick Harry Mason into stopping her. So keep that in mind. It's Valtiel again. And once again, we get another example of a spinning of a wheel being associated with an otherworld transition. With Valtiel here being the one manually controlling the wheel. Heather did it in the Hillside Center, the essentially like the business complex level, where she flipped the bathtub nozzle and another little transition occurred. Here we're seeing Valtiel manually doing it, over and over, endless loop of it. Red circle, not unlike one that we've been seeing. Hello, nurse. And here we have it. This has got to be one of the most gnarly otherworld depictions in the game. It's like burned flesh, just molting. Whereas I've been talking about my theory of a dual otherworld situation, this is very head and shoulders Alessa's otherworld. This is the fire. This is the burned flesh. This is the flesh prison she found herself in. However cool it is, it makes it very difficult to find where the doors on the walls are, which is not cool. The hand outside the window. That's just there to be fucking creepy. Let's save the game so we don't have to reset any of our progress. Now, let's just leave this in the center of the screen just to... Oh, that's fucking creepy with the light off. Holy shit. Let's just leave this in the screen just for some cool stuff. That's something cool to look at while we talk. Because anyone who watched my Silent Hill 2 playthrough will remember a long section where I kind of espoused about the concept of Kagare. And full disclosure, I basically have stolen all this concept of Kagare talk from a channel called AesirAesthetics that also did a playthrough of Silent Hill 2 and 3 with the commentary style. Big influence on what I do. I shout them out every time I do these, but I think let's just go back to the concept of Kagare. So, basic, bastardized, quick sum up, Kagare is a concept from Shintoism that means any kind of spiritual impurity that can taint land, people, animals, etc. It's a spiritual impurity that taints everything around it. If you want a really famous pop culture example of what Kagare is, strangely enough, the movie Princess Mononoke is actually a phenomenal depiction of it, where it is a rot and an impurity that taints all the land it surrounds. And there's a lot of symbols of Kagare. And in Silent Hill 2, we discussed the use of stagnant water and mold imagery, which were the language Kagare expressed there, where it's the stagnation of James and his relationship with his wife that led to the impurity that tainted his Silent Hill experience. Silent Hill 3, on the flip side, stagnant water and mold and such like that are common symbols of Kagare. Other common symbols, and the ones that Silent Hill 3 uses in its depiction, are blood outside the body, corpses, and foreign growths, such as cancers or tumors, what have you. So like a cancer, or maybe an unwanted pregnancy, maybe? Essentially using these images as symbols of spiritual rot and impurity. Silent Hill 3 has a lot more corpses, a lot more blood, and a lot more cancerous growth-like enemies than 2 did. And even 1, but at that point 1 didn't really have a solid grasp on the series symbolism. It's far more visceral. And speaking of spilled blood, eagle-eyed viewers will know that this is James Sunderland's model from Silent Hill 2. So, say hi, James. His dead body hanging from the ceiling. The blood dripping from it has totally filled the bucket set out below. Who would do this, and for what? It looks like a full-out bloodletting. Corpse and blood being spilled, symbols of Kagare. Rot, impurity. This is why, outside of all the obvious budget things, I consider that Silent Hill 3 was heavily impacted. In my opinion. Obviously, I'm not an expert, I don't know the development, but in my opinion, Silent Hill 3 was very clearly impacted and rushed by a budget and hastened development by being developed at the same time as 4. Mostly because of this, because if we're talking specifically Alessa's Kagare, the rot surrounding her, does it not make more sense for this chunk of the game to take place in Alchemilla Hospital, where Alessa was burned kept in torment in this state between, like, this comatose state where she's just coated in blood and pus coming out. This, like, the concentrated Kagare, the spiritual rot, impurity, and suffering linked to that location, specifically Alchemilla in the case of Alessa. Doesn't that make more sense? We'll get more to another example where I think it makes more sense for this to take place in Alchemilla. And, well, there's 2 more instances. Oh, it's the worst enemy in the game. Ah, fuck's sake. These are the only ones I'm gonna actively waste all my bullets on. Still doesn't take that much damage, actually. Surprising. How many show-ups I got here? I could be doing better, but... Oh, god damn. Absolute bastard. Not taking my chance. Not taking my chance. You. Shit. God. Ah, I hate these things. I hate the slurpers. Oh, this fucking room. What? Okay, finally. But right there, we get the single most direct example of the rot and impurity inside of Heather herself. From the mirror, we see it leave, return to Heather. Let's see. Okay, I don't think. Yeah, I can. It's the elevator only. But we see it leave, return to Heather, and go inside of her. So we have both the identity issues brought up with the mirror, where eventually the mirror stops reflecting Heather herself and stops moving on its own. But then the rot from inside the mirror, her old self, Alessa, goes from her into Heather herself. Interesting shit. Almost like pregnancy, some kind. This is an issue I do have with the game, is that, man, I wish we could just openly talk about the whole pregnancy angle, because the game treats it as this open secret until pretty much the last act, which I think is a little ridiculous, but we'll talk about it specifically when it gets brought up properly. So we can't see in there, but alas, someone's having fun. Now, the PC port doesn't have as strong of those PS2 texture images, so you can actually see specifically what's going on in here. It's essentially Valtiel fucking around with one of the nurse models that we saw in the giant ladder sequence.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Oh, I forgot your name.
Who are you?
Oh, okay, thanks. Happy birthday, dear. Who are you? Happy birthday to you. Happy 31st birthday.
Is this Leonard?
That's the murderer's name, not my name. I'm not your beloved Stanley either. He's underground now. His new name is Number 7. But don't worry about that now. It's time to celebrate your birthday.
You've got me mistaken for someone else. Today's not my...
I'm not mistaken. Today is your 24th birthday. And I have a present for you. Which do you prefer? To give pain or to receive it? You can have the one you hate the most. Happy birthday to you!
But you're wrong. It's not my birthday.
And that is the birthday cutscene. There's nothing coming from the receiver. Well, duh. This phone's not connected. But what about that phone call? So, obviously, just a fun little reference to the different ages of Alessa, Cheryl, and Heather, and kind of making it more mirrored about the separation and distinction between them as individuals. Alessa would be 34. Alessa would be 34 in her 30s. I forget what he says. Cheryl would be 24, and Heather is 17 at the time of this. Now, there is a payoff to specifically finding this, because there's nothing in this room you need, but there is a payoff, specifically. Outside of now knowing that Stanley's corpse is in the basement, and apparently, Leonard might be a murderer. Something strange is cooped up in the locker. I think I'm safe, but I shouldn't get too close. Actually, the more I look at it, the more pitiful it seems. Like a child locked up in there with no chance of escape. Yeah, almost like Alessa, locked up in Alchemilla. I need to get over it, but it's so clear that this was supposed to take place at Alchemilla Hospital and northern Silent Hill, rather than where the game takes place now. And there's one more. Well, no, there's two more that point towards that, especially, but we'll get to that. But the way she describes it as like no chance of escape is kind of interesting, because we have Valtiel here, trapped in a box, like desperately fighting against the confines, like he's locked with it. If that is not a direct visual metaphor for the whole concept of breaking fate, destiny, cycles, and what have you, I don't know what is. There's a bloodstained white robe hung up on the wall. Does it mean anything? Probably not. But there is this. I got a plastic bag. Okay, let's just ignore them now. Okay, we don't need to come back here. We need to go to the third floor again. Bang! Go back to the third floor. Because if we got a bag, it means we can put something in there. Something solid? Maybe some liquid? Who knows? But we need it. And for the record, when I said hello, James, like obviously, I'm not saying this is literally James Sunderland, like deep lore confirmed or some bullshit like that. Obviously, that's stupid. I'm just making a little joke. We're being little Joker boys. We're being silly men. I don't want to call myself a Joker boy ever again, because at the time of recording, Joker 2 came out not too long ago, and apparently it's cringe as fuck. So let's not associate with that. So one of the only other times I'm gonna bitch about this not being Alchemilla, I promise, but basement 1 doesn't work. Basement 2 doesn't work. Basement 3, that works. Once again, if you remember Silent Hill 1, Alessa was stored in a hidden keep underneath the second basement, at the deepest part of the hospital. And what's also down here? A bunch of corpses. And what appears to be a fucking crematorium. If that is not a direct Alchemilla call, I don't know what is. First of all, though, if you listen closely, there's little struggle sounds there of Stanley, whose new name is Number 7. Almost like he's trying to call out to you. Heather not commenting on it is kind of annoying, but I digress. Let's go look at this. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 7 is the second one. So it's 6, 7, 4, 5. Once again, also randomized. I do think the randomization, it's sort of like a plus and a minus. It is annoying on repeat playthroughs, especially if you're like one of those speedrunner guys, but I do think it does kind of keep it fresh, and it means that you can't just skip certain portions on a replay, especially getting certain pieces of information, which is pretty creepy and part of the fun. I don't know, two minds on it, but it's not a big enough deal to really comment one way or another. So, we are almost done in the hospital here, actually. Actually, wait. I think we want to go here first. That was creepy. Let's read this. Now, just before we continue, on the right page, at the bottom left on that page, the little dude with the daggers, pay attention to that. I designed an idea. We're going to be seeing something very similar to that shortly.
This world is teeming with unnecessary people. It's God's decision that I fight. As a knight of honor, as a protector of the seal, I sacrifice myself to the blood of criminals.
Okay, Frank Castle. Who wrote this? Some twisted individual, eh? I see this and want to ask him, so you think you're one of the necessary ones? But it seems like I've heard this protector of the seal business before. Well, let's go down this way. But, I think it's fair to say the Punish the Non-Believer's drawing is clearly made by Leonard. And we'll get back to that specific drawing in a minute here. And what I think is kind of interesting about it. Actually, wait, why am I doing this? Because I can! Oh, fuck, I forgot. Alright, well, how many handgun bullets I got? Fair bit, alright, let's go. So I want to show something off here. Jump something off. Game. Oh my fucking god. Okay. Unfortunately, I got let's switch over to the shotgun just to get the nurse out of our hair. Oh my god. Slurpers! The most annoying enemy in the game, bar done. Okay, load. Let's... Okay, I think that's all of them. And I have, like, no shotgun shells left. Because I need it for this room. Oh, man. There we go. Okay, we're fine. What's this? Happy first birthday. So we have a 4th birthday. Once again, cycles of 3 interrupted by a brand new 4. And come on. Health drinks. I will immediately use those. No, yeah, we'll immediately use a couple of those. There's something on the ground. Is this a birthday card? Happy 38th birthday. 14 plus 7 plus 17 is 38. But it's not my birthday. Interesting. And right next to a bloody soiled mattress with a TV set next to it. Almost like Silent Hill 1 in Alessa's room. But again, cycles of 3, broken by a 4th. Interesting. I've wasted all my resources and probably have fucked this playthrough, but we will persevere. Okay, this is where rotating saves comes in handy, but, this looks familiar. Man, red thing coming. Well, if you flip that upside down, there's a stretcher here. Not just your usual stretcher. This is more like an altar of some sort. Lit candles, a knife, and... Is that blood I smell? Did they worship that picture? Or something in the picture?
What that smell? Your blood.
Alright, let's read this. Title is Lost Memories. One characteristic, mentioned only in rare documents and dying out in the modern age, is that of the ritual sacrifice. Offering prayers, pierce a man's chest with a copper stake, drench the altar in the blood which spouts red from the heart, to praise and to show loyalty unto God. In another sacrificial rite mentioned in the same book, the victim is burned alive. This was a more dignified ceremony in which prisoners and sinners were not allowed to participate. Only the clergy could be sacrificed. Similar to burning at the stake, no comparable rite can be found in religions practiced nearby. It may have some connection with the main deity being the sun god. Even though this religion extols redemption, it brings to mind a dark and cultist history. So the bloodletting ritual and a lot of sacrifice ideas compared with the sun god, this sort of combines itself, calls itself to Mesoamerican Aztec style roots of old Silent Hill, which if you remember in Silent Hill 2, there's a lot of ties to that. With the sacrifice puzzle with the 3 stone slabs and the way they're depicted, with 3 separate Mesoamerican gods on the just on the tablets themselves, and as well as with Born from a Wish, if you remember there, where in conducting trying to conduct the rebirth ritual with the ghost of Ernest Baldwin, took a minute there, sorry, but trying to conduct the ritual with the ghost of Ernest Baldwin, it called to a lot of Mesoamerican style names, such as Jaquil Papa, which we'll be seeing something similar to that later on in this game. So, bloodletting and mixed with cultish ties to a Christian god sounds a lot like the Order, or the Cult of Silent Hill. Creepy. Yet another ladder climbing down an oblong hole to a boss arena. Interesting. Let's save the game. I saw that drawn on the dividing screens at the hospital. But this is different. Seems like it was drawn a long time ago. Somehow. So, if Leonard is a follower of the cult, it seems to imply that he's been here for a hot minute.
Heather?
Yeah? Leonard, where are you?
Thank you. Now I can finally leave here. Now Claudia's ridiculous dream is over. Well, I guess it's time to dispose of her. The salvation of all mankind. Ha! Why must we reward even the unbelievers?
What are you talking about?
About our plans, of course. It's true that God is merciful, but first, one must be chosen. Only we, who hearken to the voice of God, will be given the keys to paradise. Don't you think so, Heather?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and think whatever you want.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that I don't think the way you guys do. I don't want any part of that kind of paradise.
You're an unbeliever. You deceived me.
I didn't deceive you. We were both just wrong about each other. I thought you were a normal person.
So you tried to trick me so you can run off with my seal, eh? Heretic! You plan to destroy God!
I told you I wasn't trying to trick anyone. What is this seal thing anyway?
Don't play innocent. You can't fool me anymore. The seal is mine! I was appointed by God to be its guardian! The only thing you'll get from me is a gruesome death.
Leonard? Is that you?
Death to all who turn their backs on God!
Is every person here a mental case? Well, I guess you're not a person anyway.
Alright, it's boss fight time. Okay, so for this one, because of the way the water works, what we're gonna do is take off the vest. Supplies, no, it's an item. So we're gonna unequip that just because of the water. So I've said in earlier episodes that one of my issues with Silent Hill 3 is that I think it's too silly for its own good at times. And I think that line there kind of goes to highlight what I'm talking about. Where it's like, Heather is fighting Leonard. Like, he's a giant fucking monster who shows up towards her. And her instinct is to mouth off like she's fucking Dante? I don't know, like, that's too silly, I think. I remember having an argument with someone once where they're like, oh, I would totally do the same in that situation. And I'm like, you are a fucking liar. You would not. It's like, you're gonna throw, like, let's say a fucking grizzly bear shows up in front of you. You're not gonna throw out a one-liner. Like, you're not fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger from Commando. Like, you're not just on the spot gonna come up with this shit. I digress. Fuck. Yeah, so this is Leonard. Boss fight's not great, very simple, but there's a lot of interesting details of Leonard specifically. So, Leonard clearly is a religious fanatic. And immediately turns on Heather for not believing exactly in what he believes in. And already sort of imprinted onto her that she was another devout member of his religion. Again, another character imposing an identity on Heather. Kind of going with that running theme again. Okay, let's go. So let's read the Book of Lost Memories quote on Leonard, while also trying not to waste all my items and kill. Leonard's transfigured form. The shape he has assumed is the embodiment of Claudia's hatred or of Heather's terror. One thing we can gather is that Heather is clearly not fucking scared of Leonard here. We can very clearly gather she is not frightened by him at all, even as stupid as I personally feel that line scene was. The former option is most likely the answer of this is the embodiment of Claudia's hatred of her father, Leonard. So, we kind of are getting more parallels here with Claudia and Heather, where we get to see both of their fathers. Whereas Leonard here is all too eager to throw his own daughter under the bus and have her killed for a difference of belief and faith. Harry, on the other hand, in my opinion, seemed to have maybe had a minor crisis of faith, but still intended to give his newly adopted second daughter, who may or may not have stolen his first daughter that he found, gave her the best life possible. And even in that note we read earlier, where he apologizes for thinking of Heather as a replacement, it's very human, and it just goes to show the contrast between the contrast between Heather and Claudia, and how they really are foils for each other, which is going to keep going as the game progresses. Another thing to note: this is the second time that actually wait before we get to that. This also once again ties to my dual otherworld theory, where this is two otherworlds mixed together, because obviously this has nothing to do with Heather's terror of Leonard. He's not an embodiment of shit to Heather. However, the Book of Lost Memories directly stating that this is the embodiment of Claudia's hatred seems to imply that in the dual otherworld, the second otherworld would be Claudia's. Which again further goes into the whole foil nature and the dueling, contrasting character arcs of both Heather and Claudia in this game. I don't want to say this is a dual protagonist game, but there is a lot here for Claudia that can be interpreted through symbolism the way that we did for, say, James and Silent Hill 2, and we've been doing for Heather here. Now, this is actually, once again, the second time that we've seen something before. The description of someone transfigured. The other one was the missionary, whereas someone transfigured into a monster, whereas this is Leonard's transfigured form. So the missionary was seen taking orders from Claudia, and here we have Leonard who has straight up full-blown conversations with Heather, but is still an obvious monster. Which, if you remember from the little drawing we looked at earlier about the Protector of the Seal shit, looks remarkably similar to Leonard's form here. So, what we're seeing in Silent Hill 3 is once again unprecedented behavior of the monsters in the series. Eat shit. But yeah, we're seeing like unprecedented behavior of the monsters. Like really unprecedented behaviors of the monsters in this, on the series in this game. Now, you could make an argument for Silent Hill 2 with Maria, but the thing with Maria behaving the way she did is she still is a complete fabrication of the town itself. Maria is not a real person. On the other hand, Leonard is a real person. This is just Leonard Wolf, Claudia's actual father, as a monster. I don't know, it's really interesting, this card. So keep this in mind, where we've seen two instances of monsters being described as transfigured, behaving completely alien to how monsters do in the rest of the series, as well as being almost human-like in their behavior. Well, keep it in mind, it's interesting. Last thing worth noting. So, obviously, with all the talk of Kagare, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the return of the stagnant water imagery, where we are in a cool pit of stagnant water, rusted chains on the ceiling, like it's Hellraiser. Like, look at that. Rusted chains and metal on the ceiling like Hellraiser. So, like, rust, stagnation, rot. So if we're going on the Kagare interpretation of symbols of rot and impurity, it seems like at least the implication here is that if this is in fact Claudia's monster, Claudia's otherworld, that Leonard himself would be the primary source of the impurity for Claudia. Alright, let's uh-oh. Taking more damage here than I need to. Fuck. But it seems to be implying that Leonard himself is a large source, if not the main source of rot and impurity for Claudia. But we'll get to that shortly. Last thing to note, this boss theme fucking slaps. All the music in this game is great, but I just love the rusty, dank-ass boss themes. So yeah, that's it. Now, because of our use of shotgun, we are reduced to Pichu. So hopefully this isn't too bad for the rest of the game. Okay. Okay, this isn't great, but you know what? Fuck it. Desperate times, let's go! I usually only use this for the final boss, but fuck it. We ball! Well, that was a waste.